Hey guys, Greg here, Bone Tactical. Today I'm running a production facility that I've built from the ground up. But this is not how Bone Tactical started. To understand the blood, sweat, and burnt motor oil that built this brand, we have to take it back to 2016. San Pedro Sula, Honduras. 100-degree heat, 80% humidity, and so many murders, the local morgue couldn't process all the bodies. There I am, right in the thick of it, grinding knives at my friend Jack's shop. Even before Jack's shop, I was already making products using facilities owned by the people I was working for in Honduras. Most of you probably know or have heard rumors that I couldn't return to the US for a few years because I was stuck for the time being. I had to build a life and generate an income exactly where I was. If you want the documents and the exact timeline of everything that happened, it's organized at gregtambone.com. But this video is about Bone Tactical. Now, how I ended up at Jack's shop and why it changed everything starts years earlier. Let's rewind a bit so I can properly explain the origins of Bone Tactical. And the best way to do that is with the original Bone Hawk M1. Circa 2013, I was training with a friend of mine who was in the US Special Forces who had mentioned to me the problems they were having with weak and poorly designed tomahawks on the battlefield. My friend knew I was an innovator with a good deal of weapons experience and asked me if I'd make him a better tomahawk than what was available on the market at that time. I built it, he took it to Iraq, and the next thing I know, I'm getting pictures of my tomahawk sitting on top of a captured ISIS flag alongside Kurdish operational forces and with Iraqi special police. That first generation tomahawk featured a dual grip system that I pioneered. One grip at the bottom for traditional chopping movements and an additional choked up grip section with an unsharpened beard for CQB and close detail work. Features which have since been adapted by many other tomahawk manufacturers. I actually brought one of those first Bone Hawk M1s to SHOT Show in Vegas and took meetings to discuss my designs with Boker, Gerber, and Spyderco, among others. I even signed an NDA with Boker. Ultimately, we couldn't agree on a price for my designs, but I learned a vital lesson about the knife world, that there's really no reason to patent a blade design. There's little protection for the designer, even with a patent, because someone can legally copy your idea just by adding a bottle opener or moving a hole to a different spot. That reality molded Bone Tactical. That is why I produce small batch handmade tools that are continuously evolving. And now, even as other companies incorporate my original design features into their products, I'm always one step ahead. Back in the days, we took that first generation of products out to the salt flats in Utah for our very first real photo shoot.
Here at the photo shoot, Bone Tactical.
That was my first real experience with photography or videography, but I've learned a lot since and now enjoy creating content like this for you guys on my YouTube channel. Also, I need to clarify that Jack's shop wasn't my first workshop. Before Honduras, I was a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Utah. I worked more security contracting and consulting jobs, many, and I was designing knives on the side. My first real shop was a joint venture outside a major Midwestern city. I bought the tools, set up the operation, and hired someone full-time. Then I got burned. So I showed up with a U-Haul, packed the entire shop, and moved all of it to a friend's off-road garage and used car lot in Alabama. Even though I was just getting started, it was during this Alabama era that the industry really started taking notice. I had only designed a few knives and the original bone breaker, yet my work was already being featured across multiple industry publications such as Blade Magazine and Recoil Magazine. Then life hit. When I was overseas for work and couldn't come back for a few years, I lost that stateside base too. That was my first real lesson in what Bone Tactical would become. Building under pressure, rebuilding after betrayal, and learning lessons the hard way. The reality of private security contracting in Central America is that it is incredibly dangerous. I felt like I was down there cheating death every minute I stayed in that circle, and my life expectancy was dropping fast. But I had to do what I had to do. Alongside the high threat security work, I was hired by major corporations overseas to train their local bodyguards. I was juggling private security, corporate training, and trying to build gear on the side. In those days, I worked hard and I played hard. So as was not too uncommon for me at the time, I headed out to the Caribbean islands to clear my head. While on this little vacation, I met Jack's son at a little hole in the wall on the island of Utila. We got to talking about trucks and he told me his dad had a shop in Honduras and that I had to meet him because we would get along great. It just so happened that I had some modifications I wanted to do on my current Expedition vehicle build and was looking for a shop to do it. So I went to Jack.
Buenas tardes, gente. Estamos aquí en San Pedro Sula, Honduras. Mi nombre es Jack First.
Okay guys, I'm here in my shop and I've got my grinder over here. I'm gonna show you. I can't tell you a whole lot about where I'm at right now because undisclosed location, because I have had to move my shop several times due to some government harassment. I've been raided illegally and just a lot of problems. They've gone to some pretty great heights to even go to the point of threatening the livelihood of my friends and family. So that the location of my shop will no longer be getting shared. To continue the story, Jack and I quickly became good friends. Eventually, I bought my dream truck, the legendary 70 Series Toyota Land Cruiser. Jack and I started building it out as a new overland expedition vehicle project, and I gave him the Titan. I'll link the Land Cruiser build series also. During this time period, I was working almost completely out of Jack's shop, working on the new truck, making knives, and even doing our photo shoots there, forming that early, gritty, blue-collar vibe we were known for at the time, blades that work harder than you do. A few months into our friendship, I got to a point where I couldn't stay where I was living. The danger and violence associated with some of the people I was previously working with had climaxed. I knew if I didn't get out now, I wouldn't get out ever. I told Jack about the situation and he didn't hesitate to offer me his shop to make my knives. He even offered me a spare bedroom at his own house. Jack was a legendary fabricator, and believe it or not, his little dirt floor shop was the who's who of Honduran movers and shakers. I didn't know it then, but I would make contacts at Jack's little shop that would change the course of my life forever. Jack taught me how to take basic, limited resources and build incredible things without ever limiting their potential. We lost Jack recently, and it really hit me hard. I don't have a lot of good friends, and now I have one less. To say thank you for everything he did for me, I'm building a tribute blade in his honor that I'm calling Jack's knife. It's not done yet, but that's all I have to say about that. It's just something I need to do. Jack's shop was always temporary, not in the sense that we are here today and gone tomorrow, but I knew it wasn't my end game. To truly distance myself from the city and its inevitable dangers, I packed up what little I had and got out of town. I made an agreement to rent a house from a very wealthy family of Latin American landowners. I also agreed to offer my unique skill set in the employ of this family. They had massive estates and owned a vast number of properties in various countries. The place I rented was just a small house owned by one of their family members, but they allowed me to set up my 2x72 belt grinder next to a cardamom drying oven at one of their beneficios, and later on in one of their warehouses. The work I did for them became international, or was international, involving multiple continents, including Europe, so I was doing quite a bit of traveling in those days. It was during this time I received word that SWAT teams were raiding locations where I had previously been working in Florida, Alabama, and Utah. I didn't have legal representation at that time, so the first thing I did was hire a lawyer. I was confused as to why they were reopening charges that had been previously dropped after being deemed due to false allegations, but I had to deal with the situation as it was, not as it should be. Since I was traveling for work to Germany, we tried to arrange my surrender from there. I'll link the Germany follow-up trip as a clickable overlay at the top of the screen, because in that video, I go back a year later and show exactly what happened, where, and how. Short version, it wasn't clean or comfortable. There were additional detentions and interrogations along the route through El Salvador and Spain. Once I was finally extradited back to the US in 2018 by US Marshals, I was able to get everything cleared up within just a few short months. I got back on my grind with legal issues fully behind me, and the Bone Tactical product lineup was growing. The wealthy landowners who I was working for saw the success I was having and wanted to start charging me for the warehouse space I was using. Instead, I poured a concrete slab and built a small pole barn behind the house I was renting. I kept it minimal because I knew it was temporary infrastructure, and I could see from the beginning that they were going to try and use their ownership of the property as a trap. The infrastructure out there was terrible. As you could imagine, for a rural area in a third world country, during the day, the electricity wasn't powerful enough to even turn on my grinder. So I had to grind blades at night until we finally installed a transformer. While I was working out of the pole barn behind my rented house, I also attended my first blade show. It was a cool experience to see the industry gathered in one place, but it really solidified in my mind how set apart Bone Tactical really is. From a financial perspective, the demand for my gear was so high internationally that I was actually holding back inventory from my online customers just to have items on a table in Atlanta. Not only did I realize that I didn't have any financial benefit to being there, but I was shocked at the stark contrast between my products and those of other manufacturers. Most of the products I saw at Blade Show could be roughly grouped into one of two categories. They were either machine-made production designs geared towards the tactical outdoor user, or handmade art pieces geared strictly towards collectors. I had a different niche: heirloom quality tools that were both one-off handmade works of art in their own right and practical for hard use. Back to reality. I knew my current pole barn shop couldn't last long because I relied on it. The property owners thought they owned me as well. They started asking me to do things I wasn't comfortable with. They wanted to keep me locked in as a slave to their system. I knew I had to put my integrity first, which meant I was going to lose my home and my shop yet again. Luckily, I had been engineering an exit strategy from the very beginning. You don't do this kind of work thinking that it's going to end up all wine and roses. The problem was that it was a long-term plan, and they started cranking up the pressure on the things they wanted me to do for them that I was not okay with. So I had to speed up the timeline at the last minute. I'd be lying if I said that this wasn't one of the most difficult parts of my life. Back in the day, I did what I had to do with no other options. Now, I knew I could just call it quits. But while that was indeed a plausible course of action for most people, it was not for me. As a man who has never quit anything in his life, I couldn't start now. For me, it was just a challenge. Common misconception, probably because of all of the videos I've done all over the world, is that Bone Tactical is based overseas. But Bone Tactical is actually a Florida-based company. In the early days, I worked where I was at, shipping gear out of friends' homes or shops in Alabama. But in 2018, I began to build out my first real facility in Florida, taking it from a basic garage-type building to a massive, fully stocked, highly organized distribution warehouse and video studio. We've been there ever since. I had been quietly but heavily involved in outreach with a little church in a faraway land. Early on, that just meant handing out clothes to help the poor in an area of extreme poverty. But right around the time I was getting ready to pack up the pole barn, we were actually able to build a school and a food bank for the local kids who didn't have access to basic essentials or education. Through connections I made on my humanitarian aid endeavors, I was able to negotiate for a piece of land I again needed an out, so I sent the money. Right as the situation began to boil over with my previous employers, I tore down my shop and packed up and moved it all out. Now that I could go back and forth freely to the United States, I made a decision to invest heavily in the actual products for Bone Tactical. I'll link the Bone Tactical products and services playlist here, so you can look more into the progression if you'd like. But at this time, we really began to morph into leading the industry in two specific, distinct areas. First, TSA compliant EDC gear. We've had probably 20 different successful versions of the Bone Breaker by now, and thousands of them have been brought on planes to date, legally and without issue. I'm also continuously pouring a tremendous amount of R&D into this space to stay one step ahead of the competition. So you guys stay tuned for some big updates coming here soon. The second category of products where Bone Tactical really pulled ahead and became an outlier of success are true non-permissive environment products, or NPE gear. The NPE Ghost Knife was a massive win, which led us to branch out to other associated products like the Bone Jack Challenge coin holder and the development of the Bone Durantium material for the Ghost Spike. Across all our knives and tomahawks, the emphasis remains heavily on covert carry, because a self-defense tool is only effective if you actually have it when you need it. We also expanded into high-performance hard-use clothing and pre-packed survival bug-out bags. I use my own survival, escape, and evasion experience to build out these kits using higher quality essentials that don't just look tough, but function in line with the real gray man theory that I popularized. I'll also link the Seer and the Real Gray Man Theory video playlists But finally, because of the unique access my expedition vehicles gave me, we even started repurposing rare exotic hardwoods from the field into custom wood products. Looking back at the impossible odds, the exile, the betrayals, the close calls, none of this was something I could have done on my own. God was with me through this entire journey, and the man upstairs gets all the credit. Today, I am making what I consider to be the world's most effective edged weapons, self-defense tools, and non-permissive environment gear right here from a facility that I built with these two hands. Only time will tell how Bone Tactical ultimately goes down in history, but I think we'll be known as innovators and survivors. My biggest goal is to be the change I want to see in the world, live out God's plan for my life, and make the greatest impact for good that I can. If you want to see exactly how we built the compound on this desolate plot of cloud forest, check out the My Dream Shop build playlist. Thanks for watching. Bone out.